It's Dr. Killamoff, the evil alien who wants to pollute the whole world. He's going to smogify every tree in Tromaville. But look who's gonna stop him. It's Toxie, the trendy yet hideously deformed leader of the Toxic Crusaders, who with their help really gums up the works.
I'm toxic, but I'm tasteful.
How does he do it? What does she see in him? Where did he get that tutu?
Toxic Crusaders, they're proud,
But they still get girls. Hideously deformed action figures from Playmate.
Where do they come from? Why are they here? Why clowns? You'll laugh your head off. Killer clowns from outer space. It's crazy. Rated PG-13.
Starts Friday, May 20th at a theater near you.
A generation ago, a classic changed the shape of terror. It's had 30 years to grow bigger, meaner, and faster. Now, through the terrifying vision of the director of Nightmare on Elm Street 3, the Blob is back. Rated R. Starts Friday at a theater near you.
The night of the former is finally here. For Chris, Cindy, and JC, it's going to be the best night of their lives. But tonight is also the night of the creeps. From a world unknown comes a nightmare unimagined. First, they are under you, around you, on you, and then inside you.
They get in through your mouth, and you walk around while they incubate, even if you're dead.
They are a new breed of terror.
Freeze!
They are a different kind of horror.
Zombies, exploding heads, creepy crawlies. We could have a little problem.
The creeps are taking over.
I got good news and bad news, girls. The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
You have never had a night like this. Night of the creeps. If you scream, you're dead.
We've been having so much fun. Rings of Saturn.
Chuck!
Sam?
I'm really scared. So I thought maybe you could help me out.
Being responsible for an entire summer camp.
Nature's our nature.
What could possibly go wrong?
Everything started out so great. And now there's this crazed killer roaming the campground.
Wait, really?
We've been having so much fun. This night's been
Everyone is dead.
I mean, that sometimes happens.
Especially the camp counselors.
Like, is it an old camper back for blood?
How do you know that?
Are you sure you're not the killer?
And there we go. that was a roller coaster ride, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It was like when they said your dates have arrived, but they're dead. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I'm there for it. So
it would be some good Tom Atkins.
Yeah. Oh man, Tom Atkins is awesome. I love him so much. I mean that man is like the king of B movies, right? I mean, like, seriously, Tom Atkins is in all sorts of just amazing films. And we are definitely going to talk a little bit about Night of the Creeps in a few minutes. But first off, let's go ahead and start the show off proper. My name is Sean. I am one half of Pop Cycle Bobbles. Normally joining us in the chat room would be my wife, Laura, but she's currently taking a nap, so she's ready for this evening's block of entertainment. So we won't have quite as much chatting from her in there, but I will try to respond as best as possible. But this is Pop Pop Con Con, and this is B-movie excellence. What happens when you have $5 and a budget to try to make something that is way beyond it? Sometimes you create films that are absolutely amazing. A lot of times they tend to be slasher kind of thrillers, but there are a lot of really great B movies out there, and we're going to talk about some of our favorites. But first, let me introduce our panelists. Directly to me, screen left, is going to be someone who, if you've been watching this weekend, you've seen her quite a few times. That is my friend Anastasia Washington. Anastasia, please say hello and let them know just a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Anastasia. I am a comedian, actress, filmmaker. I check a lot of boxes and podcaster.
Absolutely. And to her screen left is somebody who, for some reason, keeps letting me come back and do panels on his track every single time we're at Dragon Con. That is Joe Crow. How do we call it? Co-chair? Is that the appropriate term?
Co-conspirator.
Co-conspirator of the American Sci-Fi Classics track. Joe, please introduce yourself and let them know a little bit about you.
Hey, I am Joe Crow. I am a writer and an editor and a host and a pro wrestling announcer. I also check boxes, lots of them, lots of weird boxes. And at Dragon Con every year and throughout the year, now that we're all virtual, we just do geeky stuff, and it's the literal best thing in the world.
It really is. And actually, last night, Joe was supposed to be on two of our panels for the evening block, but he was given a surprise host for a local wrestling match. It was a cage match, right? Like like it was a giant cage match.
Yeah.
So
they
last night,
said, we need an announcer, and I'm like, I can do that.
And so he gives me a message like, dude, I'm sorry to bail on you last minute, but I got to go announce a cage match. And I'm like, I kind of get that. Like, it was a legit reason to not be here. But we're so glad you're able to make it today, sir. So welcome.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And then below Joe, directly to the south, is somebody who you just saw on the last panel. And then on the panel before that, she's been here for our entire afternoon block for Sunday. And that is my good buddy, Corrine. Corrine, say hello and let them know a little bit about you.
Hello. This is the third time I've done this today. So let's see if I get it right this time. I'm Corrine. I am a cosplayer, writer, recovering academic, new to podcasting with our new podcast, Culture Cryptids, where we discuss pop culture and social issues in your favorite cult classics and monster movies. Mm-hmm. And also, just your local cryptid. It's fine. It's fine.
Absolutely. No, Corrine actually does a lot of stuff. She wears a lot of hats. She's helped us out at the Pop Cycle booth before. And quite frankly, is one of those people when I go, oh man, I've discovered this new horror movie. There's like 4 or 5 people or a new kind of like B movie that I'll go and ask, hey, have you seen it? One is our friend Christina. Another one is my buddy Don. A third would be Corrine. And son of a bitch, every time I'm like, oh, have you seen this? Corrine's like, I've been there. You know, like she's always to the well first. She's on her game. So this is a perfect panel for her. And then directly to her screen right is the other co-chair of the American Sci-Fi Classics track, Mr. Gary Mitchell. Gary, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and let them know a little bit about you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Mitchell. I am, as has been pointed out, the co-director of the American Sci-Fi Classics track at Dragon Con every year, along with Joe Crow. They haven't stopped us yet, and they never will. I am a writer, reviewer, podcaster, co-host of our quarantine panels every Thursday. You can find us on Facebook at the search for Dragon Con American Sci-Fi Classics track, and you can find me on the Twitter. And yes, Star Trek fans, that is my real name.
Indeed it is. And finally, wrapping out our panelist is my other good buddy who I go and talk to about horror movies all the time. And you've seen him on a few panels already. And that, of course, is my buddy Donald. Donald, say hello and let them know a little bit about you.
Hey, I'm Donald. Just a big fan of stuff. I check basically no boxes, but that's cool, you know? You got to accept all box checkers, whether it's none or all.
But
yeah,
treat action figure in the
all
back.
box checkers.
Oh, okay. So actually, here, I'll zoom back in. Yeah, that's Laura. She's actually in the room next to us. That's Laura's personal office.
Yeah.
So when she goes to work every day, that is what she has in the background for her Zoom meetings.
Well, you don't see all the Yodas.
Yeah, there are a bunch of baby Yodas that are on the front of it.
Oh, yeah. I saw those, but I was just like, he's so cute.
Yes. Yeah.
Now
Laura,
I want to know where you got that because I want to buy that.
That Sam lamp actually was at Spirit Halloween. So if you can go to your Spirit, they may still have them. Our Spirit only got one. So the first day they were open, I walked and I said, "Where's your Sam from Trick or Treat stuff?" Walked right to the back, and it was literally the only one the guy had. And Laura was so happy. It doesn't even come in a box; it's just a freestanding with a little price tag on it. But if it's still there, go find it at your local Spirit store. It is absolutely amazing, and it lights up and it casts these really spooky pumpkin shapes onto the wall. So it's legit. It's really, really cool.
I was already going to buy the Living Dead doll of him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But like I said, today we are here for B movie excellence. And what I love about these movies, no matter what kind that you're referring to, is sometimes necessity is the mother of invention, right? When you do not have millions of dollars to spend, you may only have maybe thousands of dollars, you have to come up with incredibly creative solutions. And one of the great examples of that for me is actually Latino filmmaker Robert Rodriguez. If you've ever read his book, I forget what it was called. It was like how to shoot the film or something like that. He talks about when he wanted to make his very first movie called El Mariachi, he literally made a list of everything he could get his hands on. I could get my hand on a guitar. I could get my hand on a turtle. I could find 2 pickup trucks. I had 14 white shirts. He goes through the whole list, and he then made a script about that and created a movie that not only started a Southern Texas phenomenon, but then, of course, went on to do stuff like Desperado, Once Upon a Time in Mexico, the Spy Kid movies, From Dusk Till Dawn, and so on and so forth. I mean, from the 90s, the 3 big creators of that kind of movement are Quentin Tarantino, Kevin Smith, and Robert Rodriguez. And those are guys who are still in contact with each other. They still make movies of varying degree of quality and budgets, but that's what I love about it. So I thought, let's do a whole panel talking about some of our favorite movies that basically were just made on a hope and a prayer. So I would love to just kind of start and get some of your thoughts on B movies and why you love them. So I'm going to start with Corrine, because Corrine usually gets put at the end. So we're going to start with her first, and then I'm going to work my way back in reverse. So Corrine, if you don't mind, let me know kind of like what your thoughts are on B movies and why you love them so much.
So to give you some background on this, I was doing some stuff early this morning, getting ready for panels, and my mother called me, and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing today?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I'm doing some panels and stuff." And she's like, "What is it about?" And I'm like, "Oh, there's one on B movies." And she's like, "Oh yeah, you've always loved those." And I was like, "Okay, thanks, Mom." But I think it comes from a steady diet of staying up too late and watching movies on cable television that, one, I probably shouldn't have been watching, and 2, just movies that weren't good enough to be primetime. When I use good in the rating sense, but also just really are imaginative and fun, and they're always a little outside the box, and you're never quite sure what you're going to get, which is one of my favorite things about B movies, is that especially when you look at a movie poster or a cover, that they are incredibly misleading.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Big Bird just said facts. And that is 100% true. I mean, those covers, right? Box covers back in the day. We talked about this a little bit on VHS vinyl and flea markets last night. Like literally, you see a box cover, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing, right? And then you watch the movie, and that is not the film that they promised.
I'll never forgive. There's a movie called Screamers, not the one with your Weller, but from the 80s, where the box cover is a guy who's been skinned, wearing a pair of jeans with a lake behind him, going ah, and that scene is nowhere even close to in that movie.
Right, absolutely. No,
I rented that movie like 3 times, hoping that I just grabbed the wrong tape.
Right. Oh, here's a great comment from Christina. I remember getting the wrong Jack Frost movie. Remember that? there was the horror Jack Frost, right? And then there was that crappy Michael Keaton movie, right? Can you imagine walking in and you think you're going to get a wholesome Michael Keaton like Christmas comedy, and you walk out with a killer snowman?
That's the best scenario. What are you talking about?
I gotta say, both of those movies are terrifying.
Oh, you know what? That is fair, Joe. That is fair. But Gary, how about you? Like, what are some of your memories of B movies, and why do they hold such a special place in your heart?
I've always been attracted to horror. I mean, my mom was very permissive. She was into horror stuff as well. So like for one of my earliest memories is my 6th birthday. We had just moved to Yonkers, and we were in the apartment. We had no furniture, so for my birthday, we're sitting on the floor eating my birthday cake, watching The Blob with Steve McQueen on a 6-inch black and white TV, and just having a ball. So you know, the B movies have always been there. It's like the entertainment. You know, I was not a sports kid. I was not into the regular stuff that's on the week. So my Saturdays were watching the UHF channels with the never-ending stream of 50s movies, and then staying up at midnight to watch Creature Feature and Blood Theater and seeing all the Hammer films. And so, I was watching that stuff and just eating it up. Is like, give it, shove it right in my face holes.
Oh, I absolutely agree. One thing I remember as a kid was when the Fox stations first started back in the day, before Fox, was the established network that it was. It used to only have about 3 hours worth of programming every night. It had no real Saturday or Sunday programming. They had a little bit of Sunday night stuff, but there was really nothing to do. So frequently they would go into the vault and get all of these movies that they could license for like 20 cents, and they could just throw on whenever they didn't have content. So Saturday afternoon, I still remember the name and the call sign of our local Fox affiliate. It was Watch Fox 57, the one to watch. And these people should have gone to jail for child abuse, because they put on some stuff. I'm like, how did you get this on the air at 1 o'clock in the damn afternoon? I mean, seriously. The first time I ever saw Night of the Creeps was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, and I was like 12, and it was not that edited. I'm telling you, it was legitimately like, I think they left some stuff in they meant to cut out. But that was the Wild West of kind of like like you said, the UHF era. Is you would catch some stuff, and you're like, what? And it was very much something where you get exposed to these things very early on. So I'm right there with you, buddy, on that one. But moving on, Donald, what about you? Like, what are some of your memories of B movies, and why do you love them so much?
Well, I told the story on the vinyl panel about how I had a very informative video store owner who introduced me to Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Right.
And he and I had unbeknownst to me had seen other B movies. I just didn't know what they were or like the whole concept behind them. I was like 8 or 9, and I spent from that moment on. I would watch, what was it, USA Up All Night.
Yes.
And just consume whatever they showed me. And then later Monster Vision, Joe Bob Briggs. Sean knows my love for Joe Bob.
Oh yes.
So yeah, and my mom was huge Stephen King fan and just horror fan in general. So we would just go to the video store and just randomly, I'm pretty sure randomly, just pick out movies that had cool covers and looked scary, and a lot of them were B movies in retrospect. And I was like, this is what I fell in love with, both the good ones, which if it was good, I like in my brain, I'm like that's not a B movie, but it is. But I more fell in love with like the so bad they're good movies. So I kind of have it's like I have this weird block in my brain where I'm like, if it's good, is it a B movie? Well, technically yes, but in my head I'm like, it's just a good movie. A good movie's a good movie. But but sometimes you run into just those movies that are just so ridiculous and schlocky, and you just love them, even though like technically they're not good. But yeah, so that's basically that was basically USA Up All Night, was just all those movies.
Well, I mean, to that point, Gary was talking about the original Steve McQueen, The Blob. I mean, let's be fair. That's like the mother of like B movies, right? That and like The Fly. And I mean, The Fly was made for nothing, and when they remade it for Steven Cronenberg, Cronenberg. When Cronenberg made the movie, it was still made for a shoestring budget. It was a little bit more high end. But it was right above what we would consider a B movie, because Cronenberg at that point had at least the ability to get a little bit more money for it. But it was right there at it. The Blob remake, hell, The Stuff.
Oh, The Stuff. I love The Stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, so I definitely think that is 100% valid, because sometimes you can make some really good movies that, again, have no reason to work, but they do. But I have a more important question for you, Donald.
Yes.
Rhonda Shear or Gilbert Gottfried? Who was your USA Up All Night? Who did you prefer?
Gilbert.
Really?
I loved his voice as a kid. I loved it.
I don't know.
I don't know what it was about it, but it was just like his shrillness. Just like it spoke to me. I don't know why.
I'm on the other side of that one, because I remember distinctly Gilbert always put down the movies. Does anybody else remember this? Does anybody else remember?
I do remember that
with him.
Yeah, I mean, he was always kind of belligerent to the movies. Like Rhonda Shear, it was very clear that she enjoyed schlock. I mean, she was the one who would get like all of the B movie stars. Like there's like those famous interviews she had with like Linnea Quigley, where they're just sitting on like the weird heart-shaped bed and they're just like talking about Night of the Demons and stuff, and just like the weird stuff that happens on set.
Adult me would probably agree with you, but I haven't seen it in 30 years or whatever, so I don't know. I would probably agree with you now.
You know what? Actually, you can find quite a few. There are a lot of people who have archived those segments. You can actually go back and watch just the segments of Gilbert Gottfried or Rhonda Shear. Yeah. And you can find that. So yeah, so I'm Team Rhonda, you're Team Gilbert. That's okay. This is a house divided now. You stay on your side, I'll stay on my side.
This is all up.
There you go. Right. Okay. So Anastasia, how about you? Like, what about you for B movies? Like, what drew you to them, and why do you love them so much?
Well, my mom's a huge horror fan, and so I was raised by a horror fan. And she had creative ways. Like, I remember my mom tells the story of how she got my dad to see Jaws by saying it was a documentary, and so we as I grew up, like I remember going to Fedco, which is kind of like a Costco for government workers or whatever. And they would have bins of like beta tapes for like 99 cents or something like that. And it was one of those things that I could actually beg for and get. I'd be like, can I get Vampires from Outer Space for 99 cents? And they'd be like, yeah, just be quiet and we'll buy it. And I would
beta.
On beta. And so I grew up watching those. And then also like Elvira,
yes,
is everything I've ever aspired to. I'm a comedian and I'm an actress and I love B horror movies. Like I love everything about her. And just like as I got older and started working for the like American Cinematheque and making my own films, I really saw the value in it, because that sometimes was my budget range. Or lower.
Well, right. So like Elvira's first big movie, right, is Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. And the whole plot of that is she wants to get 50 grand so she can put on a really schlocky burlesque show in Vegas. Like that's the whole plot of the movie. And like that's like her goal. And that's, she feels that once she hits that point, she has made it. But Cassandra Peterson is one of those creators that I love, because of the fact that she is so much not Elvira, but she is Elvira, and she's able to just step out of that skin and just walk around and nobody notices who she is.
Well, and people don't realize that she developed Elvira. Like this is a character that she developed at the Groundlings, and made an empire out of. And I think as a comedian, I'm like, can I find one that can have this longevity? This character is insane, and her career, her whole life. When you think about like, why she even made this skip to comedy, like was like she was dating Elvis, and Elvis was like, you can be the oldest showgirl in Vegas, or you could get out and do something big. And she was like, cool, I get it.
Right.
I mean, that's the coolest story ever. Like, Elvis told you to get out of Vegas.
You know, it's funny. I actually we just rewatched Mistress of the Dark, like I would say 3 weeks ago, and I don't know if Laura had ever seen it prior to us rewatching it. And we got to the infamous "I have to break the chains of the gate" scene, and I was like, Laura, you can't look away. This is so ridiculous and stupid. And for those of you who've never seen this, Cassandra Peterson is known to be very well endowed upstairs, and so in Elvira, they amplify that by giving her extremely low cut, bosom enhancing dresses. So there's this moment where she's trying to escape the bad guy, and she gets to the end of the cemetery, and it's almost wide enough where she can get up, but these chains are blocking her. So her superpower is she just inhales to inhale air, and her breasts are able to break the chains open so she can escape. And honestly, that is like one of the most quintessential B movie concepts that you can think. I mean, that is, in a nutshell, what a B movie can be, right? Like, it can be so funny and so stupid, and yet it can be so endearing because you're making fun of something that in other cases could be very tacky and distasteful. But in this particular instance, you know, she's owning, you know, this thing about her, and she's like, this is going to be hilarious, and it totally works. Yeah. But now I want to see you in like a gothic beehive. I want to see you go for like the right?
Right? Like I have tried out different characters to just like try, and I think I've got to find my own lane because I've tried to find an Elvira-like person, but I think
maybe you like combine it, like you go with like the super dark beehive, but maybe go like more of a Peggy Bundy kind of like where it expands out a little bit. Yeah, that could be nice.
And some animal print. Put some animal print on there.
There you go. Yes. But moving on, Joe, how about you? What are your thoughts on B movies, and why do you love them so much?
I echo a lot of what you guys have been saying, and I get to do that because I was last on the list. So I get to just say, "Oh yeah, ditto."
Yeah,
but, right. Like Anastasia, I also have done stand up, and what appeals to me about B movies is that DIY. Just a bunch of dudes coming together in their backyards, putting together things, doing it themselves. They don't have to have the Spielbergian budget and the connections. They just say, you know what, let's do a movie. And they did it. With stand-up, sometimes you just go to a place that says, hey, we allow you to do stand-up, and then you go and do it. And most of the time, they do not pay you. You pay them.
Right? You're paying for the privilege. Yes.
And I paid more to do stand-up than I've been paid. Hopefully that will change someday. But
yeah, we'll work on that.
Yeah.
Well, let's all make a pact. If one of us starts to make a movie, everybody else gets work, right? Like everybody else gets paid a little bit. So that's just a pact now.
No, that's I in fact was gonna invite all of you guys to come and do our quarantine panels with us, with me and Gary and Sean. Because you guys got to come on board.
Yeah.
But, yeah, heck yeah. But there's that DIY thing, and also for me when I was a youth. There was everybody. I kind of supported the unsupportable. It was everybody else liked the mainstream things because that's their mainstream things.
Of course,
I somehow was always attracted to, like on Saturday morning, like Land of the Lost, and I was attracted to And like Gary said, like all of you said, like the movies that you would find at the video store. Today, now with streaming, it's kind of the same thing. I watched Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell yesterday. and I'd not seen that since I saw it on a video cassette box in the 80s. And but it's the goofiness of it, where people will say, "Well, that's awesomely bad." No, it's not. It's awesomely good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is that concept of it's so bad, it's good, but I sometimes don't really embrace that because I think people sometimes don't remember that you can be intentionally funny on no budget. And humor is one of the easiest things for you to be able to capture without needing big special effects.
Right.
And I think sometimes people think that it's an accident. It's so funny. But when you talk to these creators, they're like, no, we knew that we had nothing and we needed to come up with something like that was going to make you laugh. So we intentionally leaned into the silliness of it. And that is a very strong position to be in. And in just a minute, Joe, I'm going to ask you about one of your favorite B movies. So start to contemplate for a moment. But I'm actually going to give one that I love to suggest to people that was made on I think they made it for less than $15,000. But it's actually incredibly serious. It's a very serious science fiction B movie. And the entire title of it is called Primer, What If It Works? But most people just know it as Primer. Is everybody here familiar with this movie by any chance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those of you who do not know what Primer is about two people who are working on basically trying to come up with a microchip that can superconduct at room temperature, which is kind of right now the holy grail of computing. And we're actually, basically enough, just a week ago, I actually read that some scientists have discovered a way to do this. But this movie was made around 2009 or so, and these guys create this device that allows something to run, but they think it's broken. And it starts to grow this weird mold. And what they realize is that they've created a causal loop where if they turn the machine on and they let it run for 7 hours, you can actually go back in time by 7 hours. So what they figure out is they can start to go back in time. If they make this device large enough, they can go inside of it. They bring some oxygen with them so that way they don't suffocate. And they'll sit inside of it for more or less a day sleeping. And then they'll get out of the machine and they'll have a day where they can, bet on the stock markets, but just enough where it doesn't, people don't notice it. They can make tiny tweaks to the past. But they can only ever go far as back as when the machine turned on. And the great twist about this movie is that it's all basically done, as Gary said, in people's backyards. I mean, literally, they're in people's backyards. They're in a storage container. They're not in anything that's remotely super scientific. The device itself literally looks like cardboard with aluminum foil on it and some wires, but it's just high tech enough where you buy it. And then they realize that there are consequences. And that's where I won't spoil the movie. But if you've never seen it, it's like 75 minutes long. It has literally one special effect, and it's actually done on a DV cam. So it's actually not actually in the movie. It's actually something they did pre-production. They played it back on a DV cam, and it's basically how they were able to make little pieces of paper float in midair on this DV cam screen. It's a phenomenal film, but it also very much polarizes people. But I've always been amazed at the sheer amount of creativity and the sheer amount of nothing that they had to make this movie. I mean, it is literally a nothing burger, and it is incredibly satisfying in their execution. But Joe, I would love to know one of your favorite B movies. If you have one that you can pull out of the archive and let us know one of your favorites.
It would take a whole panel to talk about the Star Wars Holiday Special, so I won't do that.
It's not a movie, Joe.
Not a movie. Thank you.
Let's go for a movie.
I like. I'm going to say Mansquito.
Oh my God! That was a sci-fi original, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh. Because it was a late. It's a creature feature, much like the 70s and the 80s and the 60s and the 50s. They just did it today, or then.
Yeah, and that was with Corrine Nemrick in it, wasn't it? Wasn't he like the main lead? Yeah, I remember this. I totally remember this movie. Yeah.
And now, the last time I saw it on, at a video store, it was called Mosquito Man, and that is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a horrible change.
Mosquito, because they even in the movie, Corrine Nemrick calls it Mansquito.
Yes, Parker Lewis. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what we're talking about. Parker Lewis fights a Mansquito, and literally for the sci-fi trailer, that's how they get you to watch it. It's just him going, Mansquito! They legit go for it.
Yes, they do. That scene is amazing. That one scene where he confronts Mansquito because he yells, Mansquito! And then Mansquito turns around like, oh, that's my name, clearly, right?
At least he knows his name.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Like, oh, yeah, I'm Mansquito.
Yeah, he's got monogram towels at home. Yeah.
Mansquito. Oh, Mansquito. Okay.
I'm Mansquito. Yeah.
Oh.
When I first talked about Mansquito on a panel, somebody said, "No, he turned around because he heard a noise." When Corrine, he wasn't turning around because they were yelling Mansquito. I said, "You shut up." When somebody yells Tony, I don't turn around.
Right.
Like somebody yelled his name.
No, definitely.
The whole thing. There were fisticuffs. It was not cool.
That's okay. You know what? Sometimes you got to defend your fandom. So I get that. Yeah. So
exactly. Me and Gary. Come on, that's all we did.
I can't believe you went Mansquito though. That was a great example. I love Mansquito. That is a deep cut, and I love that. And I'm surprised I remembered it because I remember so clearly. Like Leroy Stank said. Wait, seriously, you're talking about the Parker Lewis versus a Monster of the Week? Yes, that is exactly what this movie is. Anastasia, how about you? What's a great B movie that you love that you suggest to people?
So I went kind of modern with it. Well, not that modern. You kind of went modern with it too. Mm-hmm. And there's three that I can't ever stop thinking about.
Okay.
And so High Tension, which is a French.
Yes.
Bless you.
French extremism, I see.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I've got Frontier and High Tension are anyway, they're my jams.
Yeah.
Which sounds strange for a female to say, but I don't care. That's who I am as a person.
Right.
And You're Next.
Yes, I was literally about to say that. Yeah.
That's an incredible film.
It's so good. And Slither, those three are if I was watch some underrated, lower budget horror, those are my three, you're going to have a good time.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're also going to be messed with. It's great.
Yeah. Well, especially with Slither, because for those of you who don't know, Slither is James Gunn right before he breaks big with Guardians of the Galaxy. And you get to see him bring all of his friends that he had with him. He's big friends with Nathan Fillion. Oh God, I forgot his name. The actor who plays Merle, and he was,
Michael Rooker.
Michael Rooker.
Yeah, Michael Rooker is in this. His ex-wife was in it. She used to be on The Office. Jenna Elfman? No.
Yeah. Jenna Fisher.
Jenna Fisher, thank you. But there's so many great actors and actresses in this movie, and it is exactly the kind of vibe you get from Guardians of the Galaxy, except it's a cheesy B horror movie, and it's on purpose this way. I mean, it is so much fun. But when you mentioned High Tension, that is such a phenomenal pick because the twist on that movie, and we can't break it here. It's so good. I love it.
Well, just the opening scene. I'm sorry. There's no other opening scene in a horror movie that shocks you more than that. I remember, my mom is my horror movie partner, so sometimes this makes it awkward. I remember going to see it in the theater with my mom during that scene and just,
another great thing is you talk about one of the greatest openings with High Tension. Your Next has one of the greatest endings of a B movie, right? That last booby trap that everybody forgets about because they set it up in the middle of the movie and you forget about that damn thing.
There's so much going on. And then you're like, oh.
And by the way, guys, that's technically not a spoiler. There are a lot of booby traps in this movie, but there is a untriggered booby trap at the end that comes into play. And you know it's coming. Go ahead, Corrine.
It's the only movie I know where you can kill a man with a blender, and it just
and it works.
There you go. You're not even surprised by this point in the film that it's happened. You're like, well, here we are.
For me, a perfect double feature is Your Next and Ready or Not.
Yeah.
Oh, Ready or Not's great.
Vibe. They really vibe well with each other. I do like Your Next a little, just a smidge better, but Ready or Not is it was such a fun film that we needed. Ready or Not, and I felt like Happy Death Day.
Oh, yes. The Happy Death Day series so far has been Happy Death Day to You. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed that, even though it got away from being more of the B camp horror. It's a little more sci-fi.
Yeah, they leaned harder in the comedy.
Yeah, they went from being a genre. They did it seamlessly too, which is what I love about these two films. Is they went from being a B horror movie to a B science fiction movie. And I was like, yeah, this is great. Okay, let's keep going. What are we doing next?
I'm looking forward to the third one with where they set it up.
Yeah. Oh, right. We have to still see the actual device get turned on, right? Like we still haven't solved the plot point of that damn college experiment gone wrong. Like we still haven't fixed that damn thing. But Corrine, since you were just talking, let's go to you. Like, what's one of your favorite B movies that you'd love to suggest?
There are so many B movies out there, and I feel like this panel is very heavy on the monster movies, which I feel like I could fill a whole panel about.
I said Primer.
You said Primer,
yeah,
but there's a lot of monster movies. Slither, definitely. I absolutely agree with that one. On that same vein, I would go with the film like Tremors, which I feel is just a fantastic B movie. It holds up. I love it. I love to watch all of them. I've seen every single one. They're ridiculous. But I also kind of verge into sci-fi with my B movies. And there's two that I love, and I don't know that they're necessary. I would say one is good. I don't know about the other one. But the one that I don't think anyone remembers is a 1994 movie called Oblivion.
Yes.
It was written by Peter David.
Yeah, that was
a
sci-fi western with the lizard man with the one mechanical eye. I know exactly which one you're talking about. Yes.
It introduced me to sci-fi westerns, which is a huge genre for me. I love them a whole lot. I know you guys have a panel about them later.
We do, yes.
And that was one of my first introductions to sci-fi westerns, and it's so many elements of just classic B-ness in one film that I just love. Like, it's just so great. But the second one is very close to my heart, and I love this movie so much, is actually Barbarella from 1968. I love Barbarella. It's one I always recommend people. Do you want to watch a B sci-fi movie? Go watch Barbarella, because it's a cult classic. It's like largely forgotten if you're outside of fandom or genre. You know, a lot of people haven't seen it, and so I love it. One of my favorite things to do is introduce new people to it. I just got to do that recently. Got to introduce a couple of my friends who are into genre TV, and they were just like, "Oh, I've never seen it." And I'm like, oh no, we have to fix that immediately.
I mean, you just became one of my fiance's favorite people. That's one of her favorite movies.
It's one of mine too, absolutely.
Yeah, and what's fun about Barbarella though is it's Flash Gordon with a female protagonist, basically, right? Like if you've ever seen Flash Gordon, you love Flash Gordon, you will love Barbarella. It's that same energy. It absolutely. But I give Barbarella one up.
I see on it.
Right, I give Barbarella a one-up on that, because anytime you get Fonda floating in midair with her striptease, putting on her little silver outfit and whatnot, that's just a great way to start a movie. I'm sorry, that's just amazing.
About the spiciness in the film, and this is a hill that I will die on, is that I really feel like Barbarella is a proto-feminist film too, for a lot of things, because the protagonist gets naked in space all the time, has great, really frisky encounters, and stays innocent through it all. Like, it's her innocence, so it doesn't tie purity to sex. And that's something you don't see a whole lot, especially in earlier films. Like, women who are promiscuous are the villains.
Right.
And she's not. She's absolutely not. And she traipses through this wonderful story of just absurdity without ever losing herself or her core while having like a sexual awakening. I love that about the film.
That's her, by the way.
Yeah, and you know what? Quite like words hard. Point to fact, Barbarella is one of those movies. Sexuality never even becomes a taboo. Like, it's not even taboo. Like, it's just accepted. People are sexual in this world. It's just an accepted, thing. It's like, we're not going to make a big deal out of it. I'm sorry.
She's doing it because she chooses to. It's through her lens. She's not objectified or reduced to being just a sexual object. She's empowered with it. She's using it as her choice.
Frankly, the most objectified person in that whole movie is the blind angel, right?
I was about to say, Pygar is the one that's everybody gropes Pygar, and you're just like, this is what we're doing, okay? But it's not.
But at the same time, I get it, right? I mean, you must keep your angel oiled. I mean, that's just right.
I mean, that's what I always do.
Right, you go over, it puts the lotion on the skin, right? Like, just
drop the basket down.
No, but Barbarella is a great choice, absolutely. And it's also one of those movies that when you go back and watch it, it is so much a product of its time stylistically that it stands out. it really does stand out because it walks to the beat of its own drum, and it's something that's really special about that. Whereas other movies of that era may not have aged as well. Barbarella is just this weird anomaly that's just like, here, check this out, and you're like, wow, this is a really cool artifact that quite frankly shouldn't work and absolutely works.
Yeah, to say about the style,
if they don't age well, I feel like that's like nostalgic and like what we learn from. Like,
well, I'm not saying it is a bad thing, but there are some like B movies where you're like, okay, like I used to like it a little bit more, but you tend to have other favorites. But there are some times like, even though you're like, no, it's still just like right there, So that's all I meant by that, not to besmirch.
How
older B. No,
I
never.
like seeing little threads and stuff when the ships are going by.
Yes, and Big Merv actually brought up one that we had in the pre-roll, which is Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the Chiodo brothers, right? Oh my God, that's a mind screw of a movie. Gary, you held up your head. You have something?
Oh no, I was scratching my ear.
Oh, you're scratching your ear. I'm sorry. But I mean, seriously, like that's another great B movie. And I love that. That one of the reasons I put that in the pre-roll is because I love the ridiculousness of that. Even though they had a little bit larger of a budget, those were special effects like dudes. Like they worked in Corman special effects offices. They had worked on stuff like Critters. They had worked on all sorts of low budget sci-fi, and they knew how to take $10 and make it look like $1,000.
Oh.
And it works.
Their special effects hold up. Like if you go back and watch Killer Clowns, you're like, that's some really great when their mouths move and they're all this sort of thing. They do some fantastic stuff with puppetry that I love.
They actually had the movies at Universal last year. And
I went. It was incredible.
I was like,
it was the best days.
Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, I was like, I actually hadn't seen the movie until last year. Because I was scared of clowns until maybe a few years ago.
That was Laura. Laura, until about 5 years ago, funny story about Laura, and it's a shame that she's sleeping right now because she would be all over this panel, is about 6 years ago, she finally let me start showing her horror movies because The Walking Dead had started. And so she was always afraid of gore. She was like, I don't know if I'm big on gore. And so because she loved The Walking Dead as a comic and she wanted to see the adaptation, she kind of by accident became inundated with a lot of gore because AMC let them kind of go for broke. So she's like, okay, you can show me some horror, but if I say it's too much, we got to go away. I was like, fine. So I slowly brought her in on stuff that I thought she would love. And she kept staying away from stuff like slashers and the Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And I said, look, here's the thing that you need to understand intrinsically about clowns, that particular movie and slashers. You're rooting for them. You're not rooting for the teenagers. You're not rooting for the kids. You're rooting for the monsters in those movies. Like that's the point. Is you're giggling and laughing and you're having a good time with them. So when you're watching Jason Voorhees take down 13 kids in 90 minutes, that's because you want Jason Voorhees to take down 13 kids in extreme ways. When you watch Killer Clowns,
pay attention. That's what
right? When you're watching when you're watching Killer Clowns, you want to see the clowns do ridiculous things. And so she tried it and she loved it. She was like, okay, I get it now. Like, and so like since then, it's been the floodgates. Like she's the one who's like, hey, Sean, there's a horror movie we haven't seen on Shudder yet. When are we getting to it? I'm like, I promise we'll get there. So she's the one who's bugging me.
I always loved horror movies, but I have weird phobias, right? And in fact, one horror movie gave me a phobia. And when I actually years ago got to meet the director of Pet Sematary, I was like, you gave me a phobia as a child. And she's like, you're welcome. And I was like, yeah. But clowns, until 2 years ago, I literally was like, I'm just not going to be afraid anymore because I was tired of my friends sending me pictures of clowns to scare me. And so then I watched Killer Clowns.
That's awesome. So let's get back.
And that's one where they play into a really good B movie plays into its weaknesses and turns them into strengths.
Yeah.
And they knew that, okay, these are going to be puppets. And they're alien clown puppets. So we can make them outrageously oversized and stylized and just leaned into it. And it really works.
Yeah. And there's also something to be said about that movie about minimalism. Like when you're inside of the clown's spaceship, you don't really see walls. You see set pieces. It's almost like you're watching a stage play. And they roll into that. They roll into the fact that every once in a while they'll show you like a matte screen where you see just how large the interior of the ship is. But by and large, it's literally just a black backdrop with like 3 columns that are all brightly colored and a couple of balloons kind of pop through stage and a clown walks in. You're like, that's okay. And you just kind of go with it. And it works. It totally works. But Gary, I'm going to come back to you for a minute because you got 2 in, and Donald has been very patient.
Oh yeah.
So Donald, what are some movies that you love? Some B movies that you just like? That these are like your gold standards that you like to introduce people to.
So if you know me, my gold standard is Evil Dead. That was probably the first one I remember seeing as a kid, and I remember my dad saying, I don't think this is true, but at the time it was like, word of mouth. He's like, oh, this was made by a couple of college kids. And it might have been. I don't really know the full story. I think they were they kept running out of money, so it took a couple of years to make it. And I just remember it scared. You don't see like the camera pushing through the woods scared the crap out of me. I don't know. I mean, as a kid, I'm like, ooh, what's going on? It's a and they did so much with so little. And that whole series is my favorite ever, and kind of got me in love with Bruce Campbell. So I fell in love with things like Maniac Cop and Bubba Hotep.
Love Bubba Hotep.
Just led me down this road. But yeah, Evil Dead was the first one I saw. One genre I don't know it would be much represented, so I wanted to bring it up. Are kung fu movies. One of my favorites of all time is called Crippled Avengers. Has anyone seen this one?
Yes, it's one of my favorites.
Yes, I think it's a sequel to Five Deadly Venoms. I don't know.
It's the same cast as Five Deadly Venoms. So when that became popular, they changed the title of Crippled Avengers to Return the Five Deadly Venoms. The movie only have in common the cast.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I for some reason when I first saw it, I didn't know it had another title. I only ever saw it called Crippled Avengers. That's interesting. But if you haven't seen that movie,
I have them right over there.
It's like the ultimate overcoming adversity. Yes, thank you. Movie of all time, because these guys basically like lose all their senses. One guy goes blind, one guy goes deaf, one guy gets like almost brain dead. Not brain dead, but he gets like his head crushed in like a vice. And anyway, so they all go and train in kung fu, and they learn how to like heighten their senses, and suddenly like. And it's just like such a cool concept that I've never seen in a kung fu movie, and it's just the idea of just everybody suddenly has like almost superpowers. Like this guy can hear like leaf drop in the woods or some shit from like a mile away, and it's just like, crap, man, that's really cool. So yeah, I definitely spent a lot of time watching really really low budget like kung fu and. I almost said Five Deadly Venoms, but I think Crippled Avengers. I think I like that a little bit more.
But if you're going to bring up extremely awesome, obscure like kung fu movies, we have to give a shout out to Ricky-O, The Legend of Ricky. And if you don't know this movie, if you liked The Daily Show in the early days when it was Craig Kilborn, I think was who was running it. He actually did 5 questions, right? And it would just be 5 random questions. And the introduction to 5 questions was this man who is smashing a head. And everybody's like, what is that from? And it's from this movie, Ricky-O. And at the very end, when they would run the credits, there would always be this man who runs towards a wall and his fist lights up with energy. And he just smashes through it and it blows up the entire side of a prison wall. And again, it's a scene from Ricky-O, which is about this man who basically goes to jail because his girlfriend is murdered and he is wrongfully accused of it. And so he has to fight the system to get out. And it is so stupid. There's a point where somebody basically cuts his nerve endings in his arm. So he reaches in, he pulls out his nerves, and he ties them together like he's hot wiring a car to make his arm work again. It's so stupid and ridiculous.
Oh my God.
It's amazing. But I will warn you, it is an incredibly over-the-top gory movie. Whereas I don't remember Crippled Avengers being that gory. I remember it being, Ricky-O is like on the super extreme gore side.
If you remember Craig Kilborn's 5 questions back in the day, and it had the one guy slamming and making the guy's head explode, that's from Ricky-O.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just incredible. But yeah, I love that you brought up B movies from like, you know, kung fu movies, because kung fu movies definitely just in a umbrella are you know, I mean, almost any Jackie Chan movie really is a B movie.
Basically, yeah, because I was like, I know people are going to mention a lot of horror and sci-fi, so I wanted to come out because I also had Master of the Flying Guillotine on my list.
Yes, that's a good one.
And yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that my kung fu peeps were getting a shout. So
I think that's a really good choice, though. I really like that. But yeah, Gary, how about you? Do you have any other suggestions that you would like to toss out?
Well, most of my suggestions people have already tapped off. I want to give mad props to Anastasia for High Tension. I have known so many people that hate on that movie, and I'm the one defender, and I'm like, this movie is so great. Like, they can't get past the twist. I personally love the twist.
You know what, though? I think, honestly, it's kind of like The Sixth Sense, right? I think people who caught it in the early days, I think they were all like, wow, that was amazing. I never saw it coming. But after a while, people started talking about the twist. And they started going, "Oh yeah, I saw that coming." Bullshit. You didn't see that coming.
I saw most of the people I've seen complain that they thought the twist was stupid and didn't make sense. I'm like,
why? They explained
unreliable narrator.
Yeah, they showed you how it worked. I mean, they were very clear on how it worked.
I think a lot of people just don't want to read.
That too.
Yeah. That's true.
That too. And I'm just so glad that director has gone on to do so many awesome movies.
Like Horns. Like that was a weird, fun ride. It was more weird. Never mind.
Yeah. But question, didn't they actually do an American version of High Tension? Didn't we get an American version of that or no?
No.
Because I remember at one point they were talking about doing one, and I was like, oh, God, no.
No, he went on to do Hills Have Eyes. And then
Piranha 3D.
Right. Okay, good. Because at one point I remember
just did Crawl, which was great.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's such a good family movie. Everybody should watch that.
But Gary, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Please.
I am gonna go with. I came in here with an agenda to defend Full Moon Entertainment.
Yes,
who were the gods of B movies in the 90s. The video store boom was in full swing, and Charles Band was just realized, if I can make a bunch of cheap direct-to-video movies, I can make money. Now, sadly, he had a bad habit of not paying out money that he owed.
Right.
If you ever get a chance, talking about Oblivion, which was one of theirs, Peter David's he says he's one of the few people who ever got paid by Charles Band because he sicked 3 different lawyers on him. But he did Trancers movies with them. But the one that's nearest dearest to my heart is one of the first ones they did, which is Puppet Master.
Yes.
That first Puppet Master is a ball. It's got fantastic puppet designs. The plot's fairly straightforward. The standard teenagers in a house getting slaughtered. But there was just something about the design of those puppets that is just, especially Blade. I think they call her the widow, the lady puppet with the leeches.
Leech woman. Yes,
Leech woman.
Yeah.
Just amazing stuff. And, you say what you will about the sequels. That first one still holds up. And he managed to build a little empire. And eventually we started getting the crossovers, Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys, Doll Man versus... It was just... any one of those is great. But I'm going to go with Puppet Master as my first pick.
Well, I mean, just bringing up Full Moon, I mean, that's really kind of a great way to kind of start to crescendo out of the panel, is when you look at what Full Moon did. Full Moon not only had the Puppet Master series, which I will argue held up pretty well through the first 3. I love Puppet Master 3 Against the Axis of Evil, where it's basically the puppets versus Nazis, where Toulon is trying to get out of Germany with his puppets because they want to basically make giant versions of them. I love that idea.
Any movie where you murder Nazis is a bonus.
Right. I mean, pretty much. Right. But they also did the Subspecies movies, which I thought was a really cool take. They did more of a Slavic version of a vampire. I always thought that was really cool. They did Dark Angel, which was this really weird flick about basically a demonic girl who escapes hell and comes up to the mortal world and is basically given what's the word I'm looking for? Agency by heaven. Heaven says, go destroy the wicked. And so she's running around destroying the wicked. Of course, you have Trancers, you have Dollman, the Demonic Toys. I mean, dear Lord. I mean, Full Moon really did a pretty good job of creating a little empire of, okay, we've got $5. Let's make something cool. I always liked Arcade. Do you remember that one?
Arcade was fun. It was one of the first ones where people started going, hey, these video games are going to be a thing, right?
Yeah. And if you guys don't know about this, Arcade is basically about this game where you put on a VR headset and you're trying to get to the end of this obstacle course, for lack of a better term. But Arcade is very, very sophisticated and it learns your skills. So as you go through it, you have to be careful because if you lose, you find out it basically is able to take your soul. And you realize that the reason why it does this is because there's a little boy who died, and they were able to kind of take his brain engrams and they put it into the machine. So it's this angry child who is more or less, he wants people to stay with him in the device.
Seth Green's in it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he is. There's a lot of 90s actors from that. The female protagonist from Encino Man is in there. The best friend of Claire Danes from My So-Called Life is in there. Seth Green is in it. There's a lot of folks, which is pretty nuts.
And we also have to give it up to Dr. Mordred, which is Jeffrey Combs as Doctor Strange.
Absolutely. And also Castle Freak, I believe, was a Full Moon production too.
Yes.
So I mean, you get a lot of jam for Full Moon. Of course, Full Moon these days is pretty much known as kind of crappy, softcore porn. Basically, they really don't do a whole lot of horror. They keep trying to come back, but they're just doing kind of softcore stuff, which is unfortunate because I would love to see Full Moon really try to make a couple of great movies again. But the upshot is they are also really good at licensing out their stuff. And I know that Barbara Crampton from Reanimator fame has actually gotten the rights to some of the movies that she was in during the 80s. And a couple of them actually were from Full Moon, and she's remaking them. So she's really big on let's get female writers, let's get female directors, let's have more female leads, and let's take these movies and let's make them
tribute.
Right, I'm seriously right. So I know that she just did a version of Castle Freak with a more female-driven creative team, and that's supposed to come out, I think, in early 2021. And there's a couple of others that she's done. So if you are interested in that kind of stuff, definitely keep an eye out for it. But that's the beauty of B movies, is that you can find so many great things in them, and all you have to do is just kind of lift up a rock, or in this case a VHS tape, and just try, and you're going to get surprised by what you'll find. And I think you guys had some amazing picks, and I hate to say it, but we've got like 4 minutes left. I'm mad. Like, we went through our hour so fast. I was like, what happened? But I want to say thank you to everybody who was on this. Anastasia and Joe, Gary, Corrine, and Donald. Honestly, I feel like we should go a little bit longer, but I don't want to obligate anybody past what we promised. But I would like rapid fire. If there's any other movies that you have, I would love for you to just kind of toss out some suggestions so that people can go and make a list and they can go and watch them themselves. So since Donald, you had to wait so long last time, let's start with you. What are some other movies that you would love to suggest that people can catch real quick? Just name off.
Okay, let's see. Ginger Snaps. Dead Alive. Does that count? Let's see. Miami Connection. If you want something that's kind of goofy.
Andy Sedaris.
Exactly. And anything, if you want more of that, anything by Neil Breen, if you know who that is. I do enjoy his movies.
Awesome.
And I think that's it. I got a large list here, but I'll let other people talk.
No problem. Corrine, we're going to jump across to your side. What would you suggest?
Okay, so I've got a little bit of a list.
Do it.
Number one, I think Foxy Brown. I feel like that's an important B movie that everybody should watch. Cannibal Holocaust, because that's there's so much controversy that maybe you can spend a lot of time talking about it.
Watch the Joe Bob version if you're not like. There's a good way of watching the Joe Bob version because they give you big spoilers right before the bad stuff happens.
This movie should come again with the trigger warning.
It does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely should. I'm gonna go with Eight-Legged Freaks because I think it's a lot of fun. Yeah, for monsters, monsters are my jam here.
Mm-hmm.
Critters, I said in chat, but Critters. Mm-hmm, and actually a movie, Life Force.
Yes,
Life Force.
I love Life Force.
I love that one too. It had a huge budget, but it didn't do very well, and I feel like it really is a B movie personally.
Yeah, but you know what? It's funny because you picked Barbarella and Life Force. Both have these really interesting space nudity scenes, right?
I just really like space. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But I mean, seriously, if you've never seen Life Force, every person who's ever seen it, whether they're heterosexual, they're gay, whatever, everybody falls in love with Matilda May in that movie, right? Like you can't help but to. And I do love the fact that also it is the first on-screen kiss that Patrick Stewart ever got, and it was with a guy. So if you want to see some hot Patrick Stewart action, there you go. That's your movie. I love that suggestion. That's great. Anastasia, how about you? What would be some suggestions that you would have for people?
I was gonna say Snakes on a Plane, just because that's a lot of fun. Deep Blue Sea, because I love the aspect of making a speech and then being eaten by a shark. Behind the Mask, which is a fun mockumentary about
Leslie Vernon.
I love that one. And then any of the Godzilla movies, because I'm just a Godzilla fan. And then the one that creeped me out as a kid that made me throw out all my dolls is actually called Dolls. I had to check what studio it was because I was not sure, but it's Empire Studios. But Dolls creeped me the hell out. And I don't ever want to see it again. That one.
And you know what's funny? Anastasia, you know what's funny? Dolls is the one horror movie that Laura will never watch again because she saw it as a kid, and it still has traumatized her.
That's me.
Also,
my sister took me on a date with her, and I watched Dolls at like 3 or 4.
And you know what else? Empire's films or studios was the precursor to Full Moon. So that's what Charles Band had before he went over to Full Moon. So that was what they had before that.
Yeah, that's why I had to check. I was like, it wasn't Full Moon, but
no, it wasn't. But it's the same mental
it's the same
kind of
vibe.
Yeah, you're the same vibe. But let's go directly south from Anastasia. Gary, name off some that you would like to suggest, please.
Oh, first, I just want to say Anastasia this weekend has become one of my favorite people, and I think she's awesome.
Thank you. I got you.
Thank you. I am gonna go Reanimator From Beyond. The Dead Hate the Living, which is the Full Moon zombie movie, which has the classic line from a goth chick at the end of the movie, like, I am so done with goth after a night of surviving the zombies. And Deep Rising, which is the guy who did The Mummy before he did The Mummy and put him on my radar. It's just it's a monster movie on a cruise ship. It's a wonderful film. And pretty much that, and anything by William Castle from the 50s. They're not good movies, but they're fun.
Oh my
movies.
God. Those William Castle, if you've not seen the documentary about his death, the William Castle story, oh my God, that if you haven't seen it, it's actually on Amazon Prime. You can go watch it. That story is within itself a horror. Like, they need to make that into a movie. It's terrible, but it's also really good because of the fact that they talk about how this man just loved making movies. It's absolutely, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. William Castle, definitely a good choice across the board. And Joe, you get to be our final suggestion before we start to sign out. Yeah, please.
Thank you. My list includes the original Toxic Avenger.
Yes.
Yep. Also, Sharktopus.
Yes.
It's just a goofy movie, but it's not a goofy movie with Goofy in it. It's
different kind of goofy movie.
It's a totally different kind of goofy movie. And let me check my. Oh, okay. Also, this just is getting wide release this week. The reason I wanted to be on this panel, one of the many, many reasons, is there was a B movie filmed in my house.
What?
And Daniel Emery Taylor, who does B horror movies, is a filmmaker. He was in the original Swamp Thing. He was in the Return of Swamp Thing. He was one of the kids, and he does horror movies now. And he did this movie called It's Just a Game.
Here, hold on. I want to zoom in on that real quick so that way.
It was partly filmed in my house because he said, I need a creepy house. And I said, I've got a creepy house.
That's great.
The creepy girl with the skull mask, unlike all of the VHS covers you guys mentioned earlier, she's in the movie.
Awesome.
and that person was creeping up and down my staircase right out there. And just, it's amazing. It's a teenage slasher flick. And but it's clearly, obviously, it was made just a year or two ago, and it has that self-awareness that we talked about in other movies, and it's not a parody. It's just it's that kind of thing made today, and it's top notch.
I love that. I'm definitely going to check that out. And for me, a couple of ones that I would love to suggest is, we already talked about Behind the Mask, The Legend of Leslie Vernon. If you've seen that and you love it, there are two others that I put with that. It's almost a trilogy of movies. One is The Final Girls. And Final Girls is amazing. I love that because it absolutely tears apart the entire construct of what the Final Girls are. And I just love that. I always hope that we're going to get a sequel, but it's been about 5 years. I think the chance of us getting that is almost gone. But if they ever make it, I'm so there for. I also would suggest You Might Be the Killer, which was in the pre-roll. Fantastic movie. And yes, Christina, she just said, "You're welcome, Sean," in the comments. She did introduce me to Final Girls. And it's just absolutely a fantastic movie. Another one that is extremely low budget, and they've actually done a few of them, is actually called The Terror Tory. And it's spelled terror and then Tory. And it's actually an anthology film, and it's basically shot on Super DV in people's backyards. And the idea is that it's somewhere up in Massachusetts, there is a swath of land that sometimes intersects a few towns. But if you're inside of there, there are all these supernatural boogie woogies depending on where you are. And that's where all these kind of weird things happen. So it's almost like you're in, say, what's the name of the town that Stephen King has? Castle Rock?
Castle Rock.
Yeah, so it's almost like you're in Castle Rock, where all the weird supernatural stuff happens there. But they have all these different types of characters. There's like a wishing well that always gives you your wish, but it's always in some horrible way. There's this slasher who has an empty pumpkin head, and if he gets you, he'll actually fill the pumpkin head up with your various viscera and stuff. All kinds of weird things.
Pumpkinhead's another great one.
Yeah, Pumpkinhead is another great one. So if you do get a chance to check that out, the last one I will mention before we get out of here is, of course, the one that has Tom Atkins in it, and that is Night of the Creeps. For me, it is one of the most awesome horror comedies out there. It was made for no money. It stands up today, and it has one of the most sincere platonic male romances that you will ever see in a movie. The two main characters, one of which has I think it's like spina bifida. He's got some problems where he can't use his legs all that well. And then his buddy. There is such a love between these two men because they just want each other to be happy. And when one of them doesn't make it out of the movie, like you're destroyed over this. You're like, you don't know if you could finish the movie because the actors were so good. So if you've never seen it, I absolutely suggest it. And then of course you'll start to say "thrill me" every single time somebody wants you to watch a horror movie or a B movie. And with that, folks, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who was watching. I want to say thank you to my awesome panelists, Anastasia, Joe, Donald, Gary, Corrine. You guys were fantastic. You had such great suggestions. I loved all of them. And honestly, I should go back and watch this and release on our Discord the full list of all the movies, so that way everybody can go and watch these films because they really do deserve some time and some love because they're all fantastic. But again, for those of you who are out there watching this, I want to say thank you so much, and I do hope that you enjoy yourself as well. We are going to be going on break. We will not be back until 6 p.m. this evening, where we're actually going to be talking about sci-fi westerns, and Donald is going to be back for that one. And I think Corrine was going to, but I don't think she's actually going to be there for that one now, are you? All right,
we decided that.
Yeah, we swapped times.
Yeah, you guys swapped a bunch of times around, and we decided that I needed at least some break in the middle of the day.
She's going to take a break, but she will be back. Actually, Gary, Corrine, and Anastasia will be back for our final panel tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. They are going to be our swan song, where we're going to talk about the best movies that you've not seen. So we're going to talk about some stuff that you may not have caught yet, and we're going to tell you why you should come and check those out. So thank you so much. We will see you in approximately 2.5, 3 hours, and we will see you at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, thank you so much. And if you do get a chance, make sure to follow the link at the bottom of the page. Go to our Pop Cycle page, check out our stuff that we're selling, help us prepare for 2021. Again, thank you all so much. You're all amazing, and we will see you in just a few hours. Bye, guys.
Bye.